My Life Between Lives story from Newton-trained Institute practitioners.
I see a whole change in the thrust of searching for answers about who we are and why we're here. And I think it's wonderful, and I just hope the movement continues to expand.
Let us expand the universal consciousness together with a My Life Between Lives story presented by the Michael Newton Institute.
Welcome, dear friends. This is My LBL Story. My name is Ekomananda. I am your host. Today, my special guest is Jen Catlin. Jen is a transpersonal and spiritual hypnotherapist, a mindfulness teacher, and a hypnosis certification instructor. Jen began her career as a school psychologist, but a series of transformative spiritually awakening experiences, including a near-death experience, led her onto a much deeper path that allowed her to understand the mysteries of life and death. Jen is also the former Assistant Director of Education for Michael Newton Institute. She believes that we all have the answers and the love that we seek from within. A big warm welcome to Jen. Perhaps I wanted to know, how did you start your spiritual journey?
Well, the main part of my journey began consciously. There were a lot of unconscious things happening in childhood that I learned to turn off. But as a young adult, it began when I met somebody who I deeply recognized, and it was like this voice popped out of me that was celebrating that we made it. And I didn't know what was happening to me. I actually thought I was going crazy, or that there was something wrong with me. And from that point on, over a period of a few months, I started having a lot of synchronicities happen. And I now know were spiritually transformative experiences. So that's where it began. It was a really difficult time. It was not an easy process to go through. But now looking back, I'm at peace with it all. I also that year had a near-death experience that happened as well. And so there was a lot happening all at once, but that it was a very, very quick process that helped me wake up to my true nature beyond this body and mind. And it all led me to Michael Newton's work.
How old were you then?
I was very, very early 30s, I would say. Maybe around 31 at the most, I think.
Beautiful. When you were working as a psychologist, have you ever thought about spirituality or using your spiritual curiosity to help your clients?
I did not consciously. I was trained in yoga, so I did have that aspect. It's just not something that I consciously processed. I had some energetic experiences, but I never really contemplated it. I did not use it in my practice. I worked as a school psychologist in the schools, and I did a lot of guided imagery with children and middle schoolers and high schoolers to help them with stress management. I didn't know that what I was doing at the time was hypnosis, but I found out later. Yeah, but it was nothing that I've always been a deep thinker. I've always been interested in the stars. I always felt on a very deep level that home was there rather than here, but I didn't know what that meant. So I learned to shut it off because I didn't know what to make of it. And it just caused me to feel like I was weird and I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know who to talk to about that. So it's not anything that I tried to explore.
When you say home is there, did you ask for more questions? What sort of question that prompted you, led you on the spiritual journey?
At the time, I did not. at the time, I just remember having a deep, almost like a feeling of grief. Like I missed a home I didn't know. And again, I didn't know what to make of that. So I tried to just push it aside. It wasn't until I started having many years later these spiritually transformative experiences that woke me up more, that then I started consciously wondering what was happening. And everything around Michael Newton's work in hypnosis just showed up. I wasn't looking for it. As a matter of fact, when I initially went to explore hypnosis, the initial hypnotherapy training, I didn't even know who Michael Newton was, but it was with a Newton Institute instructor. And who was teaching the general hypnotherapy training. I didn't know who everybody else was there to get to the Newton Institute, but I did not know who Michael Newton was yet. And it was during that training that I had a near-death experience.
What happened?
Well, something happened in the training when we were practicing. I was practicing with someone else. So I was the practice client and another student was the practice facilitator, just in the regular training. This was 2 weeks before the near-death experience. I had already been having a lot of other spiritual experiences happen. And in that practice session, we were working on just self-confidence. We weren't working on anything spiritual. We didn't even yet have past life regression training. And it was just clinical hypnosis. And in the experience, something happened where I know this is not typical in session, but my conscious mind turned off. And I think that needed to happen, because if that hadn't happened, I had such an analytical mind at the time that I wouldn't have believed my experience. But my conscious mind turned off, and I suddenly witnessed myself in spirit as a light. And I was with two other lights, and there was a teacher light in front of us. And the teacher light was lighting up a diagram of the human body, helping us to learn what it was like to be human. And I remember watching it almost like it was like I remembered it. Then what happened later in the session, and the session had nothing to do with this. She was reading off of the script and did not know I was experiencing any of this. What happened later was I completely was taken to another planet with other beings. And the initial reaction I had was, where have you been? Almost like I had been looking for something I didn't know I was looking for my whole life, but it felt like family in the very deepest sense of the word. And there was a lot of communication happening. And so I was getting messages through sounds, but I knew what the sounds meant. And when that all happened and I emerged, I was sobbing, because then it was grief. Like it felt like I had to say goodbye. She didn't know, the facilitator, what was even happening with me, because we weren't talking. I was sobbing, and then my conscious mind turned back on, and I just was terrified, because my conscious mind couldn't make sense of something that felt so emotional and real. And I had a very strong logical mind at the time. So I just kept screaming, what happened? What happened? And 2 weeks later, I had a near-death experience where I don't have it anymore, but I was having a cardiac issue while I was driving, and I had enough warning I was going to pass out. I pulled over and was able to get my husband on speed dial, called the ambulance, and I had lost consciousness. And when I lost consciousness, I had awareness that I was outside of my body. I was in space, and I was surrounded by this structure of really tall gems, even with colors that don't exist here. They were very, very vivid and bright. And I could feel energies on the outside of that container that were sustaining me. It was open at the top. And I remember hearing some kind of voice that firmly said, stay here. Like, you're not supposed to. I just knew I was not supposed to leave that container. And if I left, I had the sense that I wasn't coming back. So I stayed, and I could sense the presence of others there. But by the time when the ambulance came, the next thing I was aware of, they were pulling me out of the car.
And these two experiences, it sounds to me like that you went home. Would you say that?
That's what it felt like. Absolutely. Before I even knew what home would have been, it felt like home. Yes. It felt like I found something that I did not know that I had even been looking for or searching for my entire life. But my whole being felt it as if it were home. Absolutely. And now that I know what I know, I didn't know then what I know now, but now looking back, I can say with confidence it was home.
Just when you were sharing these two stories, the scoop bumps all over my body, the energy is straight away floating up and down. I could immediately see it in front of my eyes. So it's such a beautiful experiences. Thank you for sharing. Would you say this life between life therapy can facilitate individuals who are spiritually curious about home and can take them home?
Yes, for sure.
What
This is how to do it. This is how people can access. Yeah, I think this work is it. The taking people through an LBL is how they can connect with their true self, their true nature, but also connect with home. And it doesn't take any use of any kind of mind altering drugs or anything like that. People are able to experience this simply by going within.
What role do you think that us or LBL therapy play in helping people to understand themselves?
Oh, a really significant role because it takes people out of their identity with their human self, their human ego, the human emotions and thoughts, and helps people connect from a higher perspective. And it's hard to even put into words because the perspective that people experience is so different in spirit than what they experience here on earth. The people, we might have challenges with people in our lives here on earth, but in an LBL, from soul to soul, people realize that the soul is not the same as the human. And so there's nothing but unconditional love between souls and in the spirit realm. And being able to experience that is incredibly healing for people.
The soul is not human, or I'd say the soul, the spirit energy is beyond this mind and the body. Therefore, we truly encourage people to step forward and to experience these sessions and to learn more and uncover the truth, the mysteries
Yes.
about our lives. By working in Michael Newton Institute as a formal director of education, who Michael Newton is to you?
Yeah, so I was actually former assistant director of education. Michael Newton represents to me someone who offered the foundation and the pathway. It was like he gave us a map of what happens in the afterlife when we're not incarnated. It's infinite. The possibilities and experiences are infinite, and he helped provide the pathway for which people can connect to their higher selves and to spirit. He provided that for me. He helped me understand personally at a time in my life when I was experiencing the spiritual experiences and the near-death experience. I thought something was really wrong with me clinically. And finding his work, having that show up for me, helped me process what had happened to me and so many other people that I know and have worked with. And it changed our lives.
I can resonate that feeling of something wrong with us. Because when we were looking for answers and some sort of those events happened, spiritual events happened in our lives, and we can't talk about it because it's unusual. It's like you don't know what even happened. You can't even make it what it is.
Yeah.
And the conscious mind kicks in thinking,
That's right.
oh, am I going crazy? Right? meeting Jesus or turned into light being, you're hovering above the roof. And you're turning into seeing a tunnel, hearing sounds,
Yeah.
and that you feel a feeling and total bliss. We never experience that when we are in the body and the mind, when the mind is present. And so, if you to call that moment when the conscious mind turned off, what would you call that?
In the moment when I was experiencing a session and that unexpectedly happened, to me, I refer to it as a spiritually transformative experience. It was just, and if my conscious mind had stayed on, I would have invalidated the experience. I wouldn't have believed it. But because it wasn't on, I wasn't analyzing it as I was experiencing it.
To me, that perhaps is consciousness manifests itself as pure consciousness. It's such a beautiful experience. And you had a
Yeah, that's a
minister.
beautiful point. I never really thought of it like that. I
Because
never thought of it like that.
I've
Yeah, I love that.
been having conversation with a master. So the internet dropped, right? And that is the same as the conscious mind dropped when we experience
Yes.
life between lives therapy. My teacher and I recently I've been speaking to a master, a consciousness master. He explains the four states of our existence: the waking state, dreaming state, sleeping state, and then that's the fourth state. Consciousness manifests itself. That happens in our life between life therapy, and we are going home. There's no conscious mind barrier. Subconscious, unconscious, which is the sahaja, the natural state of existence, sit behind. And when we experience those spiritual experiences, it come forward, step in front, and we are there. And you talk about synchronicity. Could you tell us a bit more about your experiences on that?
To me, I didn't know what was happening. I was having so many synchronicities at the time. What I believe was happening for me was they were events showing me like something was in alignment between my human and my soul, and that it was waking me up. It was waking my conscious mind up, getting my attention, almost telling me, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. Because I just kept thinking, wow, this happened. This is really weird coincidence. And this is a weird coincidence. And so they were events that helped to wake me up to start paying attention to what was happening. And that's when I started diving deeper into wondering and exploring about what was happening.
Do you have examples, little stories?
Oh gosh, there's many. One of there's so many examples. It started with the person I met who I'd never met before, and it felt like I just knew this person, and that freaked me out. I didn't know the person, but I knew all about the person. And there were times where I kept running into this person. I don't think that person even knew it was happening so often, because there were several times where I went to back out of a parking spot and almost hit the person in their car. And we just kept bumping into each other constantly. And I don't think they were aware like I was. And I do believe that that person really just came into my life very quickly, was in and out of my life to help wake me up. Because once I got that message, it didn't happen anymore. And there was another story, though, that happened right in the very beginning of this process. There was somebody in my town who had been a school psychologist, who also had taught yoga. And we had so much of the same background. And people kept telling me, you need to meet her. You need to meet her. Other people knew her. I didn't. And I remember one day somebody told me she was going to be at a mindfulness training I was going to. And So I pulled up her information online because years had gone by where I had not met this person. And I pulled up her website because I wanted her contact info to send her a note saying, hey, I finally get to meet you. I've heard all about you. We're going to be in the same training. And I left my computer open that day. And my husband walked around the computer later in the day and he said, why is her website pulled up? How do you know her? And I thought that was odd. And so I explained to him how all these people were saying I had to meet her. And he's like, that's my person. I know her. And it was really, really strange. There was this connecting thread. She had actually been a psychologist who had been in a leadership training that he had to go to for his job out of town somewhere. He had talked to me about this psychologist years ago, but I didn't know it was that person. I didn't know it was the same person. What ended up happening was I finally met her in person at the mindfulness training. She didn't realize she already knew my husband, but she remembered exactly who he was. We ended up becoming really, really close friends. I mean, she's definitely a soul friend. She has since passed on. It was when all of this was happening that I started running into people like this and these connections were made. And I know she's here in spirit now, but we became extremely close friends. We talked multiple times a day. We both went through a chronic illness together at the same time. There was just a lot of synchronicity between my connection with her. And that was just one of the things that happened. One out of many. I mean, there were other things that happened that I was being guided by spirit saying, you have to tell this person what you're experiencing. And I kept fighting it. And finally, one day I was at a stop sign in my car and I remember saying, okay, spirit, and I was still not really believing. And I said, if anything really exists and this really is real, then show me a sign right now. And if I'm really supposed to tell this person, show me a sign. And right then it was almost like it happened in slow motion. There were no other cars around. This person drove in slow motion right in front of my car. And so then I thought, wow, okay. I remember my jaw dropped.
The spirits respond to Jen. If you wanted, okay, here you go. You want evidence? Here you go. Now, do you believe that we spirit do exist?
That's what happened. I kept having so many, and I kept getting all the evidence. And I remember each time thinking, wow, that's really amazing, but not good enough. You need to show me something else. Not good enough. And I kept not believing it until I had a near-death experience. And I later found out I had that near-death experience because I wouldn't believe anything else that kept showing up.
How fascinating. I mean, we all are going through these spiritual awakening experiences and transforming our lives until not even 3 times, 10 times, maybe hundreds of times, being reminded, being poked. Hey, wake up.
Yes.
You are more than this body. You are more than this mind, right?
Yes.
And so all of these experiences happened, shifted your career direction, shifted your viewpoint of the self and your worldly views. And so if you define the self, what would you say?
Which part of the self? The true self?
If you just say, I am, what would you say?
I don't know that I have a word. I am I believe in this human form. I can be whatever I fill in the blank with that, that word to be. And sometimes it's things that serve me, sometimes not. And I believe consciousness is becoming self-aware through all of our experiences. We're all one, but we are consciousness in a different expression. So what my human would say I am is different than what I believe I am is consciousness. I am that I am. I just am in consciousness. I believe that is the self, but I do believe we also manifest and co-create these life experiences because after the words I am, we tend to fill in a blank with whatever our belief systems are as humans and create that life experience. But that can change too when we change our belief systems. But beyond all of that, to me, it's just I am. Consciousness is everything. Everything that exists.
Everything that exists.
Yeah. I believe we are each other. I mean, this is just my belief too, and I don't want to put that belief on anyone else. And my beliefs are always evolving too over time, but I do believe we are each other. We are all consciousness. We're just experiencing it in a different, unique way. The possibilities are infinite.
We are each other. I love that.
Yeah.
And I think this is when compassion is truly being absorbed. We love each other unconditionally. It's not a transaction level.
That's absolutely true. And of course, there's times that I, as a human, I'm imperfect, and I'm here living an imperfect life. I think if we're already perfect in spirit, so we come here to experience duality. And so there's times I forget that. There's moments I get caught up in my stuff, my human stuff. But ultimately, I know that truth is always there for me, and I can always come back to it. And I truly do believe as humans, I want to be in the space of unconditional love, but there's also times I need to have boundaries for self-care. And so I think that is okay and healthy as a human, but I can disagree with somebody. I could even feel angry towards somebody, but beyond that, I can still love them unconditionally. It's just like I'm a parent with kids, and I think parents or people who have pets or anything that we care for, anybody we care about, those people or those animals might do something that causes us to feel anger or frustration, but we still love them. And so that's how I feel. That's the space that I want to be in.
In the human vehicle, we have these human emotions. I suppose we will have to really know the self, respect our emotions. When those moments, sort of hiccups, happens in our daily mundane
so
lives,
important to
and just recognize our emotions.
Absolutely.
Let be, and it's okay to feel agitated, to feel anger, to feel upset, feeling moments of a loss, and it's all perfectly good because the emotions change. It doesn't stay. It's not permanent. And so we let go, we let be. We're not caught up with the
That's right.
temporal body and the mind. And back to your occupation title, you were a psychologist, and ever since then, you transitioned to become a spiritual hypnotherapist, a transpersonal, and a mindfulness teacher. How would you say the difference between what you do now versus what you did as a psychologist?
It's very different. There were things I did in the counseling part of the practice that were similar in terms of helping people process their emotions. So there are some similar aspects because I also do that in my practice to help people process through the hard human stuff. But there's so much that is different now. I mean, so much of what I dealt with before was really, really just in the human 3D world. And now it's gotten bigger. It's a lot more expansive now. So now it's about helping people to transcend, to process through the human stuff, but also be able to transcend the human stuff so they can have a different perspective of it. Not to ignore their emotions or push them away, but so that they can come to a place where they can also unconditionally love all of those aspects of their human self.
Absolutely right. I often tell my friends, clients, we don't just limit ourselves with the body and the mind, because a simple question is, what do we know about the self that is absolutely not changing? And what do we know the self as essence, as soul?
There is a part of us when people can access that.
And do you teach people how to access that? And that's part of your training?
I do. I do bring a lot of mindfulness. So I have a background in training in mindfulness as well. I use it in my personal life every day. I'm coming back to that. And I bring that into my practice a lot to help people learn how to be present, how to hold space for their own uncomfortable emotions, how to become more comfortable with discomfort, and realize that there is a stillness and essence about them that's always there, always unchanging, and everything else is like the weather that just is passing by, and the weather changes moment to moment, day to day.
The unchanging part, and to me, that's consciousness. Because we can take on different bodies. We take on different experiences. Yesterday, I loved that person, and tomorrow I have a different relationship, and this happens to our lives. Yesterday, I was a teacher. Today, I am a spiritual hypnotherapist. And yesterday, I was young, and today, I am old. And this allows us to really
That's the identification, the I am.
The I am part. And you said that so isn't human. And to those, some of the audience might have this challenge to believe that the soul exists. And what would you say to them?
I would personally say it's okay to be where they're at. I was there at one point too, and I'm not here to convince anybody. I don't believe that's my job. I do want to provide information and share my experience, because I feel like it is important, because there are other people who are having experiences. They don't know what's happening to them. It's scary. They don't know who to talk to. And so I want to normalize that. But it's also okay for people to be where they are. And if there are people listening who aren't sure, but they're curious about exploring, I would encourage people to read. There's so many books out there, so many resources, podcasts like this to listen to. Many people have had near-death experiences, which shifted. I've worked with several people who were atheist or evangelical who've come to the middle and shifted their views. I would just encourage people to explore, to learn how to connect with their inner intuition, and to listen to what resonates. Like, feel in the body. My body communicates with me when I know something resonates versus when it doesn't. And so just get to know their truth.
I love your approach that you allow people to be at their own space and in their own pace, to just open up the heart and the mind to know more about the self. It's such a wonderful sharing.
Yeah, I think it's important for me anyway. It's so important to meet people where they are.
Thank you. Your experiences have shaped your view towards life and death. Is there death?
That's like a trick question. Is there death? I mean, I think there's the perception of death from these bodies that we are inhabiting, but death to me is a transition. I think we're very, very much alive in spirit. So it's almost like while we're here, we're dreaming. We're asleep right now in spirit. We're experiencing the dream. And when we transition from these bodies, it's not I don't believe it's a final death. No, we're going home. We're alive.
I think you have beautifully answered this question in a very nice way, in a transition, and we're going home. We are in a dream. Because I have been trying to train myself to perform out of body, and I'm finding difficulties. And my teacher said, "You are in the dream anyway. You're already out of body. You just recognize this is a dream. You don't have to force yourself." Because I have to watch my body from skin level, bone level, blood level, circulating level, and muscle level, and then just fully focus on, and then trying to step out of the body and watch the body. I said, that's painful. He said, stop that. Right? You are in a dream. And this life is just a long, slow motion of a dream. And then go and play with everything that you do, with a child, innocent, that presence. And then life will just be happy.
Yes. Yes. That's it. It truly is when we can just be and in that space of presence, no matter what it is our experience is, and be with it and be in curiosity of it. There's so much peace there. And I know that's when I feel most at peace, even when I have unpleasant emotions. It's when I get caught in the identification with those emotions or what's happening is when I start experiencing suffering. And it happens to me.
So much peace. So much peace. I can just feel it. Like when consciousness, recognize consciousness is sometimes we don't need words. Words can become problematic. And I can just sense peace and vibrating from the other side of the world when so and so speaks. And so beautiful. Now, as a mindfulness teacher, I wonder if you have a few tips for the audience to take away, to help them to zen in, to feel the peace, to be more connected with the self.
Well, it depends where a person is at, I think. Some of the things that, especially for people who are just beginning with this and just opening up to this, I will have people start by practicing with something they already do every day. So, for example, if they brush their teeth every day, to pick an activity they're already doing, it doesn't take any extra time. And notice, just start to become aware of how present or lack of present you are with that thing, especially because it's a mundane task. So noticing where your mind is when you're doing it. Are you paying attention? If it were brushing your teeth, are you noticing the feeling of the toothbrush on your teeth? Are you noticing the smell of the toothpaste and the taste? Where is your mind otherwise if it's not? So I have people practice noticing when it wanders, and there's no judgment of that, just acknowledge and then come back to experience it through the senses. The other tip I recommend is when you're practicing, whether it's in a formal meditation or an informal moment in life, practicing mindfulness, is to practice from the perspective a new baby would have when they're experiencing the world. And so be in curiosity, be in beginner's mind, because the perspective can change. I remember the first time I stared at the trunk of a tree for an hour, a same tree that I've seen a million times before, but I practiced looking at the tree as if I had no words for it. And just through my senses, through my sense of sight, through my sense of touch. And it was a completely different experience. I remember the leaves looked so much more vivid to me. I started noticing the space between the leaves. And I wasn't labeling it with words, but just being in wonder of something. That is mindfulness. And so we can start practicing this in so many different ways, through sight, through sound, touch, here, with your breath. I mean, to sit with your breath and just experience every breath as if it's a brand new breath, because it is. You're never going to experience the same breath again. And so all of these things can be really helpful.
Wonderment, concentration, observation, and just watch the world, how it's happening all around you with the 5 sense organs. Beautifully put.
I think the most challenging part is beyond even observing is judging. Is instead of just being in curiosity and wonderment, like you said, there is a part of us that starts to put into categories of good, bad, or neutral what we experience. And so part of the practice is also just noticing that tendency and just coming back to the experience itself as if you're observing it objectively without judgment.
The significant tool that the mind carries is being able to judge, being able to assess, being able to filter, and sometimes it serves as a hindrance, a burden for us to go home. I wonder why, if there's God, if the universe actually give us this tool at all. Why does it give us this tool, the tool of mind?
So true. Yeah, it's a challenge.
I thought that the universe or the soul came over, took on the body, and the gift is the mind, it's a tool. But how are we going to utilize this tool called mind, right? The mind. The mind can do so many things, and it collects experiences from opinions, thoughts, perceptions. Now then, when we coming home, we have to dissolve them, let them go. It's like, oh, we've done with the mind. Now we don't need the mind anymore. We come home and experience total love and total peace.
Yes, that's it. I think, we have these minds because they create the illusion of separation. I think we have to know what we are not in order to be able to identify and really know what we truly are.
That is right, to truly know what we are not. And so all of your hypnosis kit is to help people to identify that what we are not. And for all the audience, what they're looking for, the answers and the love are all within themselves.
Yeah. I think there's an inherent nature for people to know that part of themselves. People are seeking for it. We're always seeking peace. We're always being guided to find that in some way. It's just, it's also a process of learning how to be at peace with this experience that we chose to have.
The experience of peace. And look at her life, look at my life, and we are two examples here. We live in peace. We breathe with peace. And this is what these spiritual experiences have made us who we are today. If you are going through spiritual experiences or life trauma or looking for answers, and find a local LBL therapist, speak to Jen. And she is so experienced and have all those golden wisdom in her mind, in her toolkit to help you to find your answer. Now, if there's a final advice that you have for the audience, and what would that be?
To continue to listen, to do everything you can do to learn how your intuition speaks to you so that you can find your truth, to pay attention to the signs and listen to those inner nudges that you get. Listen to your inner guidance. It will never serve you wrong. It's always there for you.
Listen, pay attention. And this is to me, this is to everybody. And sometimes we tend to forget these little things. And we don't link these A, B, C, D small events together. They are a chain of spiritual events. And eventually, they all come together, form a big picture that is who we are and what we are, why we're here.
Yes, yes. And a reminder to myself too. I need these reminders too.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jen, for your precious timing and coming to the show, share your experiences. There are so many, and I feel like I'm going to just scratch a little bit on the surface. So much wisdom, so much light. I can just feel your energy is so pure. And each time I have this luxury to speak to consciousness, I feel just pure love and pure peace manifested from the other side of the camera. It's so beautiful.
Thank you so much for holding space for this and for sharing the message that each of us has. It's another piece of consciousness, and I just appreciate you offering this.
And you have a training coming up in August, 27th of August.
Yes. I teach with another Newton Institute colleague. And so we have another training group August 27th that starts for hypnotherapy training. Yeah.
How often do you run this training?
Twice a year.
Twice a year.
Twice a year. And then we offer an advanced parts therapy training as well. But once people are trained. But yeah, the main training, which includes past life regression training as well, is twice a year.
Beautiful. Please do check out Jen's website. There's tons of information, and she's produced different kits, different products and services that you can access easily at an affordable rate. Thank you so much once again for coming to the show and sharing us your light and wisdom.
Thank you so much, Apple. Yeah, I appreciate it.